என்னதான் ஜூவிஷ் பீப்புள் நம்மளுடைய இந்தியாவில் வந்து செட்டில் ஆயிருந்தாலுமே மற்ற 2 மதங்கள் இஸ்லாம் கிறிஸ்டியானிட்டி மாதிரி அவங்களுடைய மதத்தை அவங்க ஸ்ப்ரெட் பண்ணணும் அப்படிங்கிறது நினைக்கல. அண்ட் அது அத்தியாவசியமான ஒன்று கிடையாது, அனாவசியமான ஒன்று அப்படின்னு நினைச்சாங்க. உருவமில்லா வழிபாடு, கடவுள் அப்படிங்கிறவன் உருவம் இல்லாதவன் அப்படின்னு சொல்லி இவங்க நம்பினாலுமே உருவ வழிபாடு செய்யற சக மக்கள் கூட ரொம்பவே ஒற்றுமையா நண்பர்களா தான் இவங்க இங்க இருந்திருக்காங்க. அண்ட் இப்ப ஆந்திரா
Constantine had bishops set Christianity. The religion's practices and beliefs were finally codified, and Jesus was officially declared the literal Son of God. Finally free of persecution, and for once nationally advantageous, the religion flourished with the power of Rome behind it. With the codification of the New Testament at the end of the 4th century, the focus and story of Jesus' death shifted from the Romans who crucified him to the Jews who found him guilty of blasphemy. As a result, throughout the following centuries, labeling Jews Christ killers was used to justify horrible acts of persecution, including riots, burning of synagogues, forced conversions, and worse. The feud between the Jews and Christians would grow in the coming Middle Ages and beyond, with the Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, blood libels, and the expulsion of Jews from England in 1290 and from Spain in 1492. Eventually, the two religions would somewhat make peace in the modern era. So why
go back to Poland? Go back to Germany?
Go back to fucking Europe.
None of you are from Israel anyway.
Go back to Europe.
Go back to Poland.
Okay, so everybody wants the Jews to go back to Poland. How did they even get there in the first place? For about 1,000 years, all Jews lived in the ancient land of Israel, until the year 70 CE, when the Roman Empire fully conquered the region, exiling almost all Jews from their homeland. Forcing them to scatter around the globe, Jews found refuge in Western Europe. But that didn't last long, because suspicions were starting to brew. Christianity spread worldwide during the Crusades. The Jews were accused of almost everything, sacrificing children to consume their blood, poisoning the wells to cause the Black Plague, and blamed for the death of the now very popular Jesus of Nazareth. Western Europe made it very clear, the Jews are not welcome here. German towns began expelling Jews in 1096, followed by England in 1290, then by France in 1306, and then by Spain in 1492. But where could they go? Starting in the 1300s, the King of Poland actually started inviting the Jews in, offering legal protection, economic freedom, and religious autonomy. But it wasn't out of love. It was because Jews brought important skills, trade, finance, and most importantly, literacy, in a mostly illiterate society. They could keep records, manage estates, handle tax collection, and communicate across borders. In other words, they made the system work. By the 1500s, Poland had the largest Jewish population in the world. We're talking hundreds of thousands of Jews, building communities, running businesses, and integrating into Polish society. But the golden age didn't last long. By the mid-1600s, Poland was hit hard by war, plague, and economic collapse. And like always, when a society falls apart, somebody has to be blamed. And the Jews were the easiest target. They were outsiders with a different religion, different language, and different customs. In 1648, during the Kalmynsky uprising, tens of thousands of Jews were massacred across Ukraine and Poland. Entire communities wiped out. Then came the ghettos, anti-Jewish laws, and eventually the Holocaust. The lucky survivors found refuge in America, and others returned home to Israel. So when people say go back to Poland, just know that the Jews didn't start there. They survived there and made the best of it while they could. Follow for more.
In 610 CE, after years of tortuous oppression by the Byzantine Christians, the Jews of the Arabian Peninsula were living in relative safety as respected craftsmen, metalworkers, and jewelers. At the same time, in a cave near Mecca, Muhammad, the founder of Islam, claimed he had received revelatory visions. Visions that indirectly would impact Jewish life, for better and for worse, forever. Muhammad ibn Abdullah was born in 570 in the Arabian town of Mecca. He had a difficult childhood. His father died before he was born, and he lost his mother when he was only 6, so he was ultimately raised by an uncle, a merchant who taught Muhammad many tricks of the trade. Muhammad learned quickly, and by the time he was a teenager, he had earned the nickname El Amin, the one you can trust. As he grew older, Muhammad became aware of the moral deficiency of his fellow Meccans. They worshipped idols, neglected women and the poor, and were materialistic. He was increasingly disturbed by this reality and began to spend more and more time alone, meditating and fasting. According to Muslim tradition, it was during this period that Muhammad received a life-changing revelation in the form of the angel Gabriel. Gabriel commanded Muhammad to spread the belief in one God, or Allah in Arabic, and recite divine verses that would eventually be included in the Quran, Islam's central religious text. 3 years later, Muhammad set out to share his vision. But while the minority Jews and Christians believed in a singular God, most of the surrounding Arabs were polytheists and did not. This didn't deter Muhammad, however. In the beginning, he managed to convert around 40 people in spite of opposition from the merchants of Mecca, whose trade depended on the city's pagan rites and religious sites. In 622, an assassination threat forced Muhammad and his small band of followers, known as the Companions or Believers, to flee to Medina, a city almost 300 miles away. The people of Medina responded more favorably to Muhammad's message, perhaps because of their contact with the many monotheistic Jewish tribes who had lived in the region for generations. Muhammad believed in the same attributes of God that the Jews did, and even adopted many Jewish customs. He and his followers prayed toward Jerusalem, fasted on the Jewish Day of Atonement, and adhered to dietary laws that shared striking resemblance to Judaism's dietary laws, kashrut. He also adopted the Jewish ritual of circumcision. Muhammad assumed that because of these similarities, the Jews would look favorably upon Islam and be willing converts. But he was wrong. The Jews put up a strong resistance to Muhammad's claims of prophecy. For starters, Muhammad claimed to be a prophet centuries after the end of the Jewish era of prophecy. Malachi, the last Jewish prophet, had died some 1,000 years earlier. And according to Jewish tradition, the seal of prophecy was only to be reopened when the Jews were able to return to their spiritual center of Jerusalem at the end of days. It was also unacceptable to the Jews that Muhammad viewed Jesus as a prophet. In addition to conflicting religious beliefs, the Jews were concerned that, like Jesus, Muhammad would be deified, and they would once again experience terrible persecution. As time went on, relations devolved further. Muhammad and his believers levied accusations of treachery against the Jews, and they fought and massacred many. When they laid siege on the forts of the Jewish tribe of Banu Qurayza, all of the men were beheaded and the women and children enslaved. Who survived? The few who agreed to convert. Muhammad reportedly said, "Had only 10 Jews or 10 rabbis followed me, every single Jew on earth would have followed me." In 628, Muhammad's now 700 followers attacked Khaybar, the largest Jewish community of the Arabian Peninsula, and burned down their date palm groves, destroying their main source of livelihood. The Jews were then forced to surrender and give up 50% of their harvest as a form of taxation. This tax, known as the jizya tax, was a means of humiliation and discrimination that would endure for centuries in Islamic law. After his death, Muhammad's followers continued to conquer the Middle East, both militarily and ideologically. Within 10 years, they conquered the land of Israel, then known as Palestine, Syria, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Persia. They advanced across North Africa and in 711 conquered Spain. By the middle of the 8th century, 90% of the world's Jews were living under Muslim rule. In Islam, the Jews had a new adversary, but no generalizations can be made about Jewish life under Islamic rule. It was as varied as the rulers that reigned. Although Jews were allowed to practice their religion, they were always treated legally as second-class citizens, officially designated dhimmi status, and subject to strict rules. If the Jews kept their heads down and paid the heavy annual tax, they could generally live without fear of forced conversion, massacre, or expulsion. And while the system occasionally broke down, this relative freedom enabled a flourishing of Jewish thought and set the stage for some of Judaism's most influential scholars and philosophers.
Up next, 200 years later, one man in Egypt saves the Jewish people from splitting in two.
Son Jesus Christ that was shed on Calvary. And by the precious blood of your beloved Son Jesus Christ that was shed on Calvary. And a piece of advice to Israel. People of Israel, you will never find peace. You will never accomplish peace. You will never live peace ever until both Jews and Muslims acknowledge Jesus was crucified on Calvary. There will be no peace in Israel. Period. 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 Because the one who gives peace is Jesus of Nazareth. No one else. No one else. No one else. The Jews denied his existence. The Muslims said he was not crucified. But God the Father says, my son was crucified on Golgotha, on Calvary. Whether you are a believer, whatever religion you seek and you believe in, whether you are an atheist, the only time you will find peace within when you acknowledge Jesus Christ in your life. That is
popular. The first Jews came to India 2000 years ago. Imagine this. sailing in King Solomon's the first ship fleet, arriving at the shores of port city of Kochi in Kerala. Some reports suggest that it was after their temple was destroyed in Jerusalem that they found shelter and arrived in India. But Kochi was also a popular spice trade destination, so that is also considered one of the attractions. The first batch settled initially in the Cranganore district in Kerala. And India was now becoming a popular destination, but also for the Jews realizing who were facing persecution elsewhere across the world that India could become their safe shelter. The ruler of Kerala, Bhaskar Ravi I, is known to have given privileges to the Jewish community. Jews were also known to have assisted the king during the war on Sera kingdom by Raja Raja Chola. The community's skill in military and financial matters impressed the ruler, who even presented a copper plate to the community in their honor. Now, this copper plate is a protected archaeological artifact, and the dates match to that of the king's reign, confirming about the influence of the Jewish community in India. Even after the advent of the British to the Malabar in the year 1795, the Jews continued to live in peace and prospered. Most of them were agriculturalists, warriors, traders, who later changed their trade to more fitting professions like lawyers, engineers, teachers, and physicians. Jews even adopted local ingredients like coriander and curry leaf with chicken curry for their delicacies on special occasions. Now, the first synagogue in India was built somewhere around the 4th century by the Malabar Jews in Cranganore in Kerala. It stood there from 1344 to 1789 AD until, according to reports, Tipu Sultan's army destroyed it. There are many other synagogues that remain or have been restored in the past few years. Paradesi Synagogue in Kochi remains one of the oldest for now for the Jewish community. But what an irony today that the same Kerala where Jews first came and settled and prospered and lived in peace with all the people, the same state had rallies hosted inviting Hamas leader recently who asked for an uprising against Israel and against Jews. Meanwhile, the Jews also went on to settle down in other parts of the country like in Konkan, Bombay, now Mumbai, Calcutta, now Kolkata, Mizoram, Manipur and Delhi. Secular Indian rulers gave land to help them settle, where they built synagogues, cemeteries, schools and professional setup, but always adapting to the Indian culture, never in confrontation with Indian values. No incidents of forced conversion, nor attempts to dominate over the natives. Jewish community is largely known in different categories. Ben Israelis in Western India, Malabar Jews that first settled in Kerala. There are also Kochi Jews. There are Baghdadis in Bengal, largely having fled persecution from Iraq and also from Syrian, Yemenite, Persian and Turkish origin. The community developed as a result of Jews who were forced to flee religious persecution in Muslim-majority lands to northwestern part of India during the British imperial era. There are also the Ney Menashe Jews of northeast India and the Bene Ephrahims of Andhra Pradesh. Judaism is one of the oldest faith, and the community has faced horrific persecution from their ancestral homeland where Israel now stands, and from many other countries around the world too, from the Middle East to Europe, including, we all know, facing the Holocaust. India remains the only country where the Jewish community has not met with persecution, and may that safety always remain for them. Many after the 1950s. 5,000 Jews currently live across India.
To tell him in one sentence what is Torah, the Rabbi Hillel said, what is hateful and hurtful to you, do not do to others. It has the first 5 books of Moses.
In India, artist Amrita Shergill, whose mother was Hungarian Jewish. Ruby Meyer, by the name of Sulochana, was one of the first top movie stars in India. The first Miss India in 1947 was Jewish, Esther Victoria Abraham. Major General Jack Jacob, Indian Army veteran who led teams for liberation of Bangladesh in 1971 India-Pakistan war. David Sassoon was well-known businessman and a philanthropist in the 1800s. They are known to have set up libraries and value institutions in Maharashtra. Renowned Odissi dancer Sharon Lowen is also a part of New Delhi's Jewish community, and Nadira from the Baghdadi Jewish community. Famed Bollywood actor Aditya Roy Kapoor is also half Jewish from his mother's side, Salam Aron, who is also a former actor. Maharashtra is one state where most of the remaining visible population of the Jews live. In 2016, Maharashtra recognized Jews as a religious minority. Has been urging the government at the center too to grant them minority status and add them separately in the census. Today, India is a second home to many Israelis, especially youngsters who wish to get a break from their mandatory defense forces training. So there are parts of India that are known as mini Israel. In Himachal Pradesh, for example, there are signages in Hebrew. There are delicacies ago to 2023. It continues to be known in India as contributor for making India a more vibrant and a healthy place.
The only country in the world where the Jews were never persecuted is India. The Tibetans, every religious community persecuted in the world has found refuge in India. Why? Because it's a land of tolerance. And this tolerance is due to one community, which is called the Hindus,